guys gonna get me stoned?
I don't know. I think we're gonna get stoned to start off to reboot this thing.
All right, let's make a quick list of subjects we want to cover.
Well, it's the playoffs for the Celtics and the Bruins.
Right. We should definitely talk about both of those.
We didn't actually ever talk about Gronk retiring because
we didn't air that episode.
We didn't air that episode. We deemed it. Instead, we just talked.
You guys are helping me out.
Um,
Open a window.
the last episode was about Kraft going to the get his massage.
Open a window.
You open the window. We're recording the podcast already, so you're now part of it.
Cross me up! Don't snap, don't breathe, just leave me up this skin. And baby begin!
But since Gronk has retired, he also used the Lombardi Trophy to take batting practice and dented it. What else?
Tiger Woods.
Oh, Tiger Woods, of course.
And how it's weird that the racists who used to hate him now like him because of how insanely flawed he's shown, and maybe because of they also fetishize the kind of blonde white woman that is seen on Fox News.
What racists used to hate Tiger Woods?
All the ones who like golf.
Yeah, sure.
You don't remember that golfer who's like after he won his first Masters, because you get to choose the menu in Georgia at Augusta National Golf Course if you win the Masters. You get to pick what's on the menu. And he's like, I'm really, and Tiger Woods was up by like 11 shots heading into the final round, and it was obvious no one was going to catch him. And that guy said, I'm really looking forward to fried chicken and watermelon on next year's menu.
I vaguely remember that, Jesus.
I remember that. I remember it all.
I'm really happy for you.
I don't want to remember these things, but that happened.
Alright, so is there anything else we should talk about?
Besides Tiger Woods.
I mean, I think the real thing is that we need to talk about how you tried to cancel the podcast forever.
I did try and cancel the podcast forever, and I think that we need to do some heavy reflecting on why we think what we have to say about Boston sports is interesting enough to record it.
It's not because our sports takes are better than...
Our sports takes are bad and under-researched.
That's not true that they're bad. It's
they're
probably
correct,
true that, it's
they're
not our
not,
full-time job to research and to stay up with sports and talk about it. And our competitors do have it as their full-time job.
And they're bigger losers than us. Like, the people who have, full-time jobs, in dumb fields, don't, it's not like they're in cool bands or, you
have to be
doing
cool
a bunch
like us.
of, all the cool shit that I do with my free time.
Yeah, you have to be unemployed if you want to be cool. Like me. Okay, so...
This is horrendous. We shouldn't do a podcast. Look, there's a few problems I have, right? When someone was like, you know how, there are all those interesting plural nouns, a murder of crows? Why do they call it a murder? That's so weird. Or, a thunder of rhinoceros.
Okay.
And then the plural noun for white men is podcast. That hit really hard, Sam. That hit hard. How do we... Ariel, please keep your voice down. We're trying to focus here.
Yeah.
Look, it is nice that we get to hang out face to face. I love doing that. I just think it's insane to think that, other people would want to hear a recording of that.
Well, we let them decide.
And they've decided and they've stopped listening, so we should just take a hint.
What do you mean they've stopped listening? What are you talking about? You don't even have the fucking software in your computer to look up the statistics.
That's true.
You've always been 1 foot in, 1 foot out. What is the fucking difference if we record our conversation or don't? It's not like it's going to require any more effort on your part. But the idea of giving up the podcast for me, is I'm looking up freeing hours of space. Not to mention, computer hard drive space.
Do you need some RAM?
You got some extra?
No, but like, if you need RAM, if that's the problem.
I mean, here's my, like, we decided to give this a go. We felt that there was a lack. There's obviously plenty of content for Boston sports, and
just most of it is being delivered by right-wing voices.
Yeah.
And we have left-wing perspectives in
right.
general.
So we decided to give this a shot.
That it would be good if it came from us.
Yes.
And so like there's one sports story that I was thinking a lot about, which is how the best women's basketball player in the country, Brianna Greer from Baylor, she won the national championship with Baylor and beat UConn a few years ago. This is how she got on my radar, but she's like really tall and really, 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 really good. Mm-hmm. She's the best basketball player in the world. She just blew out her knee because they don't pay WNBA players enough to like a living wage to have an off season. So she was playing extra basketball in the off season instead of resting and recuperating like all the men professional basketball players do, and she like severely injured herself.
That's terrible. Men basketball players injure themselves in the off season sometimes too. But I mean, that doesn't address, like, there's obviously a very big wage gap.
The wage gap situation, and just like I mean, just like beneath that, a fucking like non-living wage.
Okay, so what does this have to do with what we were talking about?
Well, in all the like list of interesting topics enumerated by you at the opening of this about the things that we are going to cover in this podcast, which is like very meta that you started surreptitiously recording me without my knowledge. Anyway, you didn't mention that. That story didn't miss your radar, and so if we started talking about that, we could have totally, you know, like added something to the conversation, be a missing voice in sports talk. Though, to be clear, there are plenty of women who have sports media podcasts who talk about things like this. We just don't listen.
Okay, so I don't really know where you're going with this.
Also, we could talk about the marathon, the Boston Marathon, which just happened.
Well, so the thing is, we are a Boston sports podcast because we want, like, that's the teams that we follow. Not like we've never been like just big general sports fans. We maybe like have a sense of some of the bigger storylines, but we never like had ambitions to be something beyond a Boston sports podcast. So I don't even know why you would bring up that WNBA star. And so somewhere along the line
to sports, and
yes,
Tiger
it's
Woods
true.
Isn't
right. So we're
dude.
obviously gonna hit some sports issues that are bigger than just the Boston sports situation. But there's someone on Twitter who was just like went on a long thing about the marathon bombing, the Boston bombing on Marathon Day, and the aftermath, and like how the sports teams rallied, and like I remember, you know, David Ortiz saying that he fucked with the wrong city or something. But on Twitter he was like, you know, well, I have to leave it for someone who's a little bit smarter than I am to like be able to comment on like the precise nature in which the Boston sports teams rallied around the city, and like what that says about jingoism and fear, and it just like I was like, oh wow, we fucking totally, I don't know, like we fooled these people, or like
we fooled one guy on Twitter into thinking that we would have some insight into commenting.
That kind of made me think that we have something going, and it's all a moot point. And I'll tell you why.
But
we started the podcast.
Like
it doesn't even matter.
Tweet. Don't you think that that's like an interesting?
Absolutely,
question?
I would love to talk about that.
Okay, so we'll put that on the topic list.
For sure, that's on the topic list. But I think that what I want to say is it doesn't matter if we've been successful or not in our podcast. If the people listening are like consider this venture a success.
They consider the sports talk of the part of the venture a distraction from the enjoyable part.
Well, it depends on who you're talking about. There are people who are actually sports fans that would disagree with this. People who I know.
Like one
I'm
person?
Yeah, at least.
Could you
at
name
least
them?
one person, yeah. Yeah.
Who?
Craig.
Craig?
Yeah,
That
Craig.
doesn't sound like a real person. You don't know any fucking Craigs.
I do. You do also. You're just
Give me your
acting out.
phone and let me see all the Craigs that are saved in your fucking phone book.
This is another moot point. You're really trying to distract me from what I want to say, which is that regardless of the success of the
Craig.
podcast itself,
Can we just...
one thing that you can't deny and that can't be denied by anyone is we started this podcast as the Red Sox were starting to end the regular season and gear up for the playoffs, and we took it through that historic playoff run all the way to the World Series, at which point we picked up the Patriots, from the beginning of the season to the end. This season will now be recorded forever, and that also ended in the Super Bowl. And one of your theories, or I don't even know, one of the first, it seemed at a certain point for you started talking about this podcast having significance about it being a catalyst for a revolution in this country because of all 4 Boston sports championships, which I went along with because it's sort of charming, and you took it too far as usual. But the point is that we're in the playoffs again, and the Celtics and the Bruins, and they're both looking pretty good, and yet also it could go either way, and it's the perfect time to start picking up this podcast and doing it very seriously, because there is still a very good chance that we will sweep the championships, and to not do the podcast during this playoff run would be a colossal failure on our part.
Yeah. All right. That's a good point. Because I am extremely superstitious. On my Red Sox thread, I had to kick Matt Joya off the thread because last year we started this Red Sox thread with the Joya family plus me, which is a real honor.
What do you mean we started? The Joya family had a thread.
And I, unlike you, got invited.
You were like, hey guys, do you think I can join your family baseball thread?
That sounds nothing like me, and stop. Go talk to your imaginary friend Craig, because no one in the real world
Craig is that friend.
What's his last name? Okay, never mind.
It's Matt Joya's friend, Craig.
You don't.
You know Craig. What are you talking about? Craig, I'm sorry I forgot your last name.
Oh my god, I can't wait for Craig to be revealed. Anyway, I kicked Matt Joya off of his own family Red Sox thread because last year the Red Sox lost the first game of the season. Mm-hmm. And then Matt Joya quit in disgust. He quit the thread in disgust after one game. And then we won 17 straight games, so he came back. And so I said that what's missing, because the Red Sox are the one topic we should have is that the Red Sox are the worst team in baseball.
Yeah, I don't even know if we should talk about it beyond just saying that.
I called you up in the middle of spring training and I said I was disgusted with our spring training record, and you said that was, quote, deranged, end quote. And now who's laughing now?
Wait, what? I don't remember that, but if I said that, then I was 100% right. That's my sentiment still.
But it turns out we're the worst team in the Grapefruit League in spring training, and we're the worst team now. So it wasn't that deranged.
Okay, once again, the Celtics and the Bruins are in the fucking playoffs right now, and you want to talk about the first month of baseball? Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for containing multitudes and experiencing the full range of human emotions, including excitement and happiness about the Celtics and Bruins, and disgust and dread about the Red Sox.
All right,
simultaneously.
I'm really proud of you that you contain so many multitudes, but it's derailing our podcast.
You don't sound
So
proud of me.
if you can just contain your multitudes at a different time and try and stay focused on the podcast for now, it'll be a little bit better. So, here's my one question to you now. We're together, which is nice.
It's so nice.
It always makes it better. But should we just release this episode as is now without any of the actual content? Just so our fans know that we're still doing this, we're going to come through and then talk again in a couple days.
I'm just getting warmed up. Let's talk about the Celtics and Bruins.
Wow, you got a little too warmed up and you jerked your head back and smashed it into the corner of a table. So, are you okay?
I'm okay. It hurts so much.
Oh my god.
Oh. I'm so embarrassed. Turn off the podcast. Oh god.
All right, we're back. Max got hurt, but you're okay.
I'm okay. I can't believe that happened though.
Come on back to the.
If we were doing a video podcast, that should be like an all-time.
You can't paste the microphone. The is gonna. You gotta.
I'm just trying to walk off my injury, brother.
Well, you said that you were ready to keep recording, so I pushed record now. So sit, have a seat. There you go. All right. Let's start with the Celtics.
2 playoff games in.
Yes. So today is Friday. There's game 3s tonight
In Indiana.
in Indy, and you have to be feeling pretty good about where the Celtics look as far as this series goes. If you're just gonna zoom in on this Indy series, you're feeling really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people are saying, this is a Celtics team we've been waiting for all year to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that. I think, it really remains to be seen if this team is going to come together or just put together one of the most frustrating seasons of all time. Like, everyone is saying the Rockets, who I watched play the other night, are like, who won 12 fewer games than they did the year before, look way, way better. And this is like the team they've been trying to be all along.
Yeah, and it's true about the Rockets. And that's a good comparison because
they had a frustrating season too, especially in the beginning.
Well, they had a frustrating beginning of the season. I mean, I don't think it continued to be frustrating towards the end like ours did. But we're clearly not in the same class of team as the Rockets in terms of how we're playing right now. On paper, like in terms of potential, we could theoretically compete with anyone. And so you're right, nothing is going to be resolved by this series. It doesn't really matter how well we look. And I think that it's amazing to see Kyrie in the playoffs. And it's great to see Jason Tatum back, picking up where he left off last season. Hayward really came on strong at the end of the season. There's a lot to kind of...
He looks great.
There's enough there to think that there's a chance that he's going to be a difference maker in the playoffs. So, but yeah, it is this kind of awkward moment where the Celtics are doing really well, but we don't stand to gain anything. Even if we sweep this first round series, it won't mean anything because it's against the Indiana team without their best player. And I will say about that Game 2 victory is that we played great and we took the game towards the end, but they clearly lacked an elite scorer, all world talent to.
This will be the last series where we don't go
Right.
up against someone who has a fucking finisher.
Right, a Jason Tatum go-ahead three-pointer with 50 seconds left is an amazing thing to happen, but when what happens when you have Giannis or Kawhi or Durant,
or Jimmy Butler, or
right on the other, like they that's not game over, which it was in Game 2. Now, I think that Brad Stevens is coaching a lot better. He's starting to coach differently, and it's clear that he's gonna have like a playoff rotation. Kyrie had 40 minutes, played 40 minutes. That's all good. Terry Rozier is filling in admirably for Marcus Smart, as best as Terry Rozier can do. Fill in for Marcus Smart, who's I miss dearly. And if we do, I mean, we're going to really need him for the next series, and he won't be available, and we'll see if we're able to
I'm not
overcome
sure.
that.
No, it's all going to come down to Al Horford in the next series.
Against Giannis?
Yeah. If Baines and Al Horford are controlling the paint and everyone is doing their defensive assignment, we can win that series.
I wonder if Baines will play a lot in that series. I know that if we play Philly, Baines will play a ton, but if they're going Giannis at the 5, which I think
They go
Lopez. They put Lopez at the 5.
Yeah.
But sometimes they do put Giannis at the 5. We agree Baines can't be on the court, and even Lopez is a 3-point threat more than he's a post threat. So it's I don't know what you do in that situation. Maybe you put Horford on Lopez and you put Baines. I don't know. Do you go zone D or something?
You go zone D, 'cause that's what we did last year.
Is that no? Last year we somehow
kept him in front of us, and he's only averaged 35 points a game.
Yeah, we kept him in front of us. I mean, so I guess everyone sort of is well, we have Semi Ojeleye, and Semi Ojeleye, we'll put him in to guard Giannis, and and I think that's like it's ludicrous. He did have some good games against him.
That sounds just that makes me sick to my stomach.
I know we don't.
What
we don't
did you
stand
say?
a chance. That's like a common narrative thread is that somehow Semi Ojeleye can guard Giannis.
It's gonna be like LeBron. It's his like Achilles. Everyone else needs to play really well.
Yeah, you
spread
can't.
it out.
Yeah, you can't guard Giannis. Like Giannis is gonna get 30 points a night, 35 points a night, and we have to win anyway.
Right. No, Giannis can. Right. 35 a night. 36 a night. It's fucked.
But Kyrie got 38 points in Game 2 against Indy. So like,
I just want to say about this season. Like, here's my hot take. When Brad Stevens is short and cold with the media. I'm sorry.
Kyrie.
When Kyrie is short and cold with the media, it is just as awesome and great as when Bill Belichick is.
Yeah, for sure.
That is my hot take. And that we should extend Kyrie the same pleasures and joys of, like, dismissing the racist charlatans who inhabit the Boston media scene like we do when Bill Belichick does.
Yeah, it's actually better when Kyrie does it because he's like... Belichick, you can only project what these like special like higher intents on, like because in reality he's just so like he's just doesn't give you anything, and he doesn't give you anything to the point where it becomes easy to project what he's really thinking, but it is just like conjecture. And Kyrie, on the other hand, is explicit about why he has problems with the media, and he's awesome. We love that.
Also, he said Thanksgiving is bullshit, and everyone's like, huh? What? And then because he, a Standing Rock Sioux tribe member, looked around the room, saw a bunch of white faces, and was like, never mind. Can't have this conversation, forget about it. And, like, I respect that so much. I think that is the most underrated moment of the season. When at Thanksgiving, he said, Thanksgiving is bullshit, and then realized that he was talking to a bunch of white dudes from Boston, and that why a settler colonial holiday needs to be fucking unpacked a little bit was completely lost on these people, and he just gave up.
Yeah,
it was like
I would have done the same probably.
Sometimes as a competitor, you know when you're beat, and I love that moment.
He boarded the plane to Indy with the atlas, a National Geographic, a big world atlas under his arm. And I don't know,
Interesting.
Yeah, funny. Okay, so what's going on with the Bruins? Pasta came alive in Game 4 against the Maple Leafs.
Look, here a couple of things. Let me just set the stage for you.
Okay.
The Bruins are in a dogfight with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are a really good team.
And we went 7 with them last year in the playoffs, right?
In the playoffs.
And we won.
But then
it took a lot out of us.
Then we went up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who beat us in 6.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, the Tampa Bay Lightning had the best record
right.
of any team in hockey in the last 70 years.
Wow.
They were incredible.
They're that good?
And they got swept in 4 straight, and they're out of the playoffs.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Who swept them?
The Columbus Blue Jackets.
It sounds
who
like
had never won a playoff
That's a hockey
series.
team?
Yeah.
The Columbus Blue Jackets?
Yeah.
Wow. That's ridiculous. Okay, so a lot's riding on this first round series. And we went down 1-0, and then we tied it up, right?
And then we went down 2-1, and then we tied it up. And now it's headed back to Boston.
In Game 5, which is tonight.
Pivotal Game 5.
Also tonight, I think.
Pivotal Game 5.
Pivotal Game 5, for sure. But Pasta came alive in Game 4. What happened?
So, it was a crazy game, right? We had, the front line, our best line, which is Brad Marchand, the pansexual libertine. Mm-hmm. Patrice Bergeron, the Hall of Fame.
Love Patrice Bergeron. I remember his rookie season.
Yeah, he's the man.
I feel really of all the Bruins, I feel really connected to his arc.
He's played thousands of games for us.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And he was a highly touted draft pick. Okay, so our best line.
Hadn't been producing.
Mm-hmm.
So he dropped Pasta to the second line with Krejci. Mm-hmm. Which was an interesting idea because that means we had 2 dangerous lines.
So,
right, we had Marchand and whomever you put with Marchand and Patrice are going to be capable of scoring a goal on every shift.
Yeah.
And anytime Pasta has a competent player like Krejci on him, That's a dangerous line too.
So did Pasta go from being the wing to being the center? Because Krejci doesn't play center, does he?
No, they were each were the wings. Anyway, on the second line. But then halfway, like in the middle of the game, he puts the line out together, the top line with Pasta, and they scored 2 goals in 1 minute and put the game out of reach.
Wow, cool.
As a momentum shift.
Both Pasta's goals?
Yeah.
But kind of created because he's back playing with the first team.
Well, Brad, they were both mostly Marchand goals, but Pasta's so good. Anyway, the Bruins, at this time, they have the best record of any remaining team in the playoffs.
Okay, but clearly
they have
best record in the regular season does not equate with postseason success necessarily, which is obvious by the sweep of the
Tampa Bay Lightning, which is hilarious.
That is hilarious.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And I mean, Milwaukee has the best. The Bucks have the best NBA regular season, and maybe they'll get swept in their playoffs too, if not the first round, in the second.
Are you insane? First of all, they haven't
got.
They've won the first 2 games of their series.
I'm saying they're gonna get swept in the second.
Oh, that's what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big.
Yeah, I knocked on wood already. It's fine. All right.
Fucking stupid.
So, how do you think? Wait, what do you think about the Boston sports teams in Marathon Monday?
Oh, I think. Well, I mean, like, let's just remind everyone quickly what happened. A former FBI asset did a bunch of bombings and killed some people on Marathon Monday.
Why do you call him an FBI asset? Like Jason Bourne asset, or
yeah.
But not actually. What are you talking about? The older brother. This is a famous Boston brothers. This is our segment of the podcast where we talk about famous Boston brothers. The Zarev.
I remember that I got called to federal jury duty when it was because they needed people who were gonna have to be willing to consider the death penalty. And I got called to jury. I got called to the courtroom. The brother was tried in, and I was completely unwilling to execute anyone who made mistakes with their brother.
You did not get called to jury duty.
I didn't
for this case. What are you talking about?
I wasn't picked to be a juror.
But you got interviewed?
I got a jury summons, yeah.
For this case?
At the time they were impaneling the jury for this case, yes.
And they asked you, and you told them straight up, I would never consider the death penalty in
they
a
actually
involving 2 brothers?
Well, I wouldn't.
True. I wouldn't either.
It's crazy.
I mean, or not brothers.
Yeah, that's also that. Well, there are some... the state part of the state executions are wrong.
I don't even know if I would recommend a jail sentence to this man. Sorry.
Brothers are cool.
I mean, it's not cool what he did.
No,
but that doesn't. Yeah.
If he did it, if it wasn't a false flag, I mean, there's a lot of interesting ideas out there because of the response, right, and the fact that the FBI had been working with one of the men for quite some time.
In what capacity were the FBI working with that?
It's on some Chechen shit, but the thing is
this some spare change shit, or is this real?
This isn't spare change shit. That drug related killing in Waltham.
Oh yeah,
is something that the FBI was aware that he was involved in and had been talking with him for years about. His father-in-law was a CIA agent, about Chechnya. These are facts. These are not.
He was involved in a drug murder.
Yeah. And they knew it.
Okay, so...
In any case, I just want...
him and his brother allegedly bombed the Boston Marathon.
That's all that's important for the story about the marathon. Which is crazy because the last 2 years before that marathon, I had been right at the finish line where that was happening, removing the Israeli flag and putting up a Palestinian one.
Really?
So, if I had been there on this particular one, doing that work of taking down the Israeli flag, because they have the world flags at the finish line.
So you were in Boston at the time, of course, so what were you doing instead of that? Do you remember?
I was actually not in Boston. I was driving home that day. I was in New York.
Because I remember you were in Boston...
The next day, I was in... I was that...
During the manhunt, when they shut down the city, you were driving around looking for them.
Well, okay.
You
There was a brief moment where I was concerned because of a news report that I heard that my city was under attack and that I was pretty sure that they needed my help. Because
Did you drive to Boston from New York because you thought Boston was under attack?
Yeah,
and you
well,
had to defend it?
I'm sorry. Can we just get back to the don't attack my city if you don't want me to run you down in my car, is what I was telling people that day. But I was wrong.
But they put a curfew out, they asked people not to leave
And I violated
their house,
it.
and you violated that because you were just out there trying to find...
I wanted the madness
It's
to
a
end.
little bit like the dog chasing the car, like, and he has no idea what he'd do if he catches it. But you were out there, you had joined,
Actually,
the biggest manhunt in Boston history.
So, I think what needs...
At least since Paul Revere.
Thank you. We're going to do that at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
We're going to mention what famous day and year this is.
Oh yeah, because it is April 19th. Okay.
April 18th, brother. It's April 18th.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's.
We need to stick with what's important to keep in mind about the marathon. What the marathon should always be remembered for is that it was a test kitchen in which the Boston police, along with the Army, the FBI, and every major law enforcement agency, went door to door through different communities in Boston, kicked in doors, and searched every house for one person. They canceled work, everybody. There was a shelter in place order, and you weren't the train stopped running, all the banks and everything, all the businesses were closed. You had to stay home. And they went door to door with tanks and militarized police, and it was fucking crazy. It's as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, that's insane. And people were totally down to go along with it because
Of
there was
weird nationalism.
Yeah, and pride about the marathon and
because
Patriots Day is also a holiday in Massachusetts. It's a holiday that only exists in Massachusetts. This isn't we get off school every year to go, you can go watch the marathon. It is this thing where
it's called Patriots Day to honor the we will be talking about this at the end of the podcast because it's fucking sweet. But the matters of the Revolutionary War.
Right. So, do you think and that to me is part of it that they were able to use that.
They use sports to help.
To help people feel like that was okay, the way that the police response, the government response was good and what we wanted, and how did they use sports to do that?
I mean, in the same way they use sports around 9/11, right?
Mm.
I think that's I don't think you have to look very hard for examples. I mean, when we see fighter planes over major sporting events, like flyovers, like the marathon, there's always been missile carrying jets flying over the marathon from Hanscom Air Force Base. It got to be very extreme, and I think it's truly insane what Boston looks like now. And it's all there's people who are wearing camouflage, right? Which, if you're wearing camouflage in a city, you're not wearing it to blend in, right? You're wearing it to stand out.
Right.
And there's these men in camouflage with huge guns standing around almost every half mile of the marathon. They activate the National Guard now for the marathon to make people feel it's safe. It's safer to have uniformed military on this occupying our streets. I don't it's a very bad scene.
Yeah, that's insane.
And I think it goes one last thing I'll say is that what I see on Marathon Mondays in Boston is the right wing's plan for a climate change disaster, right? Instead of, they don't have the left is pushing a Green New Deal or something even better, right? And the right is pushing a militarized police surveillance state. That's their solution to.
Yeah, and I mean, in order to see that through, you better believe that sports is going to play a huge role in kind of anesthetizing the public to those
It always
changes.
does. As Jaylen Brown says, sports is a way of control.
It's a form of control.
It's beautiful that Jaylen Brown knows that.
I'm still not exactly clear on the precise way that sports factored into that. I mean, I kind of get what you're alluding to, and if I was going to take a guess at it, I would say sports provides a sense of belonging, or like gives you a false sense of community that you then take pride for, and you're used to like fighting, right? Like Boston right now is fighting Toronto in the NHL. Boston's under attack, and then David Ortiz says, "You fucked with the wrong city," and we're
He
like,
said, "This is our fucking city.
This is our fucking city." Like, and we're like, "Oh, we love David Ortiz. He's got our back when we fight New York. Now we have to go get his back and stay in our houses while the FBI like goes door to door."
No, I mean, I just think that like instead of talking about how insane it was that they were just like traumatizing the entire city of Watertown and going door to door, and how the Constitution was suspended for a couple of days, and instead of talking about how the fucking FBI knew this guy and didn't do anything about him, instead we're all just talking about Boston Strong, having fucking Marky Mark movies being made, the Red Sox go on a World Series run, and having like flags and marathon runners honored the entire way.
Right.
It's like it's meant to subvert the critical function.
Right.
In any case, I think that like this is like the sort of underbelly of that thing I was talking about with if Boston wins the 4 major sporting events. Yes, there would be a huge amount of anger from the rest of the country who hates us, but it truly remains to be seen if that anger could be channeled into overthrowing capitalism.
But you think that it would render, like, the rest of the country would be so disappointed in the whole framework of sports that it would render it as a opiate of the masses, like it would take away its effectiveness, which would then make people across the country more ready to actually...
Yeah, fuck this. Fuck them. Those smug bastards up north keep getting all our titles.
What, they say that in a Boston accent?
I mean, that's what I would say if I were them.
Okay. Should we briefly... Rob Gronkowski retired.
Oh, Rob Gronkowski retired.
We made an entire episode about this, but
it was so depressing,
it was
you guys.
in the midst of our like kind of existential crisis, and the playoffs hadn't started yet, and we were like talking about Gronk retiring, and then we just like...
We were talking about us retiring.
We just kept like talking about ourselves retiring. And so, I don't know. Gronk retired. He's one of my favorite baseball players of all time.
He's your favorite? Oh my goodness.
So Gronk retired. He's one of my favorite football players of all time. One of my favorite athletes.
He's apparently a pretty good baseball player too. Did you see?
I don't know what you mean by that. Oh yes. Oh of course. Oh yeah.
Apparently he brought a Super Bowl trophy to opening day, which the Red Sox lost.
The Lombardi Trophy. And then he took batting practice with it.
And dented it. Like, it's now got a Gronk tattoo on it for life.
But they make a new one each year. But this year's Lombardi Trophy, they're going to leave the dent they announced. That's so fucking cool. And Gronk, did you see his one-word response? He released a press statement.
No, I see.
Oopsies.
No, I mean, there's no one I've ever loved watching more, and no one who, like... you knew is going to like save us when it looked like its bleakest.
Yeah.
He was so good. I just want to flag for everybody that the greatest, most gifted athlete I've ever seen is retiring before the age of 30 because of how terrible football is for his body. And that really makes me feel bad, because there was no one who was bigger and stronger and cooler than him. And he couldn't do it anymore. And he's not even 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of how gifted and big he was that it made it so dangerous for him to play football, because the only way that anyone can tackle him is by jumping at his knees. But yeah, your point stands.
I just think that like it's also about the nature of football.
Yeah, and he's obviously an incredible blocker too, so he's like often smashing his face against someone else's face is small. In short quarters. So I guess if there's no other topics, you want to talk about today's date?
Oh, sure. Maybe we should just educate our listeners and read them a little poem. Do you want to go line for line or verse for verse?
I feel like maybe the thing to do is just to let you do the whole thing.
Maybe you should phone in Roger Geller.
Do you want to do it in unison, brother?
Yes.
All right, fine.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year.
Hit me.
He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea on the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the Old North Church Tower.
You're insane.
As a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea.
And I on the opposite shore will be,
Ready to ride and spread the alarm.
through every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk.
And baby begin.
Young and tomorrow.
Then he said goodnight and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide in her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hole that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide.
Brothers go. And I hit the road.
Till through the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door.
Sound of arms.
Pay attention to me, please. I'm trying.
Then he climbed to the tower of the church, up the wooden stairs, with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch, and the somber rafters that around him made masses and moving shapes of shade, like trembling ladder, steep and tall, yada yada yada, goes on and on. Basically, we can read this fast. This is the end of it. It's my favorite verse. You know the rest. In the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the founders gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not. All right, never mind.
What? You're not even gonna try and finish it? You had a couple more lines to go. This is exactly how you do karaoke, by the way. You can't really help but kind of just immediately going to the fifth gear, and then you're just stuck there, and you're screaming at the top of your lungs, and your veins are throbbing, and you still have like 3 more verses to go.
It's important to know that as if you know anyone who is British in your life, that they probably don't think of themselves as a redcoat, which is a big problem for me. So if you're listening to this still for some strange reason, and you know a British person, make sure you tell them that they're nothing but a goddamn lobster back, and that you demand an apology for the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I have some British people in my life that I'm friends with, and I don't
Do you think that
condone your sentiment
But
at all.
Do
I
you think
you're
that
way
those
off here,
British
as
people
usual.
know about?
And I just,
Sam.
at this point, I'm used to it, so I know the proper
Stop
response is not to indulge or further ask questions, but to just move on and say thank you all so much for listening to Phone Wallet
We
Keys,
must
David
identify
Ortiz.
the redcoats in our lives and inform them
Okay.
of their status.
I know.